This video was brought to you by Nebula and our brand new original series, What to Follow USA, which is out now. Kamala Harris has had an incredible start to her campaign. Days after replacing Joe Biden as the Democrats' presumptive nominee, her approval rating surged. She overtook Trump in the polls, and a wave of optimism swept over the Democratic Party. However, in the past few weeks, some of the momentum has apparently come out of Kamala's sails. Polling suggests that Democrats' enthusiasm has waned slightly, and while she's still ahead in the popular vote, Harris has now gone from odds-on favorite to win in November to a slight underdog, at least according to some of the forecasts. So in this video, we thought we'd take another look at the polls, Trump's mini comeback, and what might happen next. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, before we get into the why, we should remind everyone that because of how the Electoral College works, even if a candidate is ahead in the polls, i.e. on track to win the popular vote, that doesn't mean they'll win the presidency. As you'll surely remember, this is exactly what happened in Trump's first victory in 2016, where he lost to Hillary Clinton by 2 points in the popular vote, but still won the Electoral College. While commentators have often suggested the Electoral College always advantages the Republicans, usually with reference to the 2000 election, where Democrat Al Gore won the popular vote, but lost the Electoral College to George Bush, this isn't quite true. In fact, the Electoral College significantly advantaged Obama, but he just won by large enough margins that no one really realized. Assuming the distribution of votes between states would have stayed consistent, Obama could have lost the popular vote by more than 1% in both 2008 and 2012, but still won the presidency. Unfortunately for Democrats though, because since 2016 they've consolidated their vote share in Democrat strongholds, but not done quite as well in battleground states, the Electoral College now overwhelmingly favors the Republicans. Today, most pollsters think that Harris has to win the popular vote by about 3 points in order to win the Electoral College, what we might call the tipping point. This obviously means that Trump can still be the favorite to actually win, even if Harris is ahead in the polls. But it also means that tiny changes in national polling, especially around the tipping point, and especially when they're driven by shifts in battleground states, can have massive effects on each candidate's odds. And well, that seems to be exactly what's happened over the past week or so. According to Nate Silver's forecast, widely considered to be one of the best around, Harris's poll lead has shrunk ever so slightly in the past few weeks. On August 23rd, Harris had a poll lead of nearly 4.5 points, 48% to Trump's 43.7. As of Thursday, however, that shrunk to nearer 3 points. At the time of writing, Silver's aggregator has Harris on 49%, compared to Trump's 45.8%. For reasons just explained, this slight change in the polls has led to a relatively dramatic change in each candidate's odds of winning. While Harris apparently had a 55% chance of winning in late August, that's now flipped, and Trump is a 60% favor. Now, the magnitude of this reversal has a fair bit to do with the specifics of Silver's model, namely the way it tries to account for convention bounces, or Harris's lack thereof, and the consequent assumption that her lead will drop to just 1 point by November. The basic claim that Harris's odds have declined over the past couple of weeks is becoming the consensus. Polymarket, the biggest crypto-based prediction market in the US, gave Harris a 54% chance of winning in mid-August, but now gives Trump a 53% chance. Predictit, a New Zealand-based prediction market, still gives Harris a slight lead, with an implied probability of about 52%, but this is down from nearly 60% in mid-August. Similarly, Meticulous, a forecasting site that basically lets individual users or forecasters predict outcomes and then calculates an aggregate by weighting predictions based on users' previous forecast accuracy, says Harris's odds have fallen from 55% in August to nearer 52% today. Now, it's important not to overstate all of this. Even in Silver's model, which has seen the most dramatic swing, the race is still a toss-up, as it's been ever since Harris replaced Biden. And forecasts should generally be taken with a massive pinch of salt, especially this far out from an election. Nonetheless, it's clear that Harris's advantage has at least waned in the last few weeks, and some of the momentum that drove the initial poll bounce has apparently faded, as evidenced by a slight decline in enthusiasm among Democrats. So, what explains this? Well, some of it has to do with RFK Jr., who withdrew from the race and endorsed Trump on August 23rd. However, the actual impact of RFK's endorsement was probably overstated. At first glance, it did look like it could be a big deal. After all, RFK was sitting on about 4% in the polls, and if all of his voters followed him to Trump as directed, this would have made things immensely difficult for Harris. But that's not really how things have shaken out. Polls conducted before RFK's withdrawal that tested the ballot both with and without RFK suggested that roughly 60% of RFK voters were otherwise Trump voters, while the remaining 40% were otherwise Harris voters. And polls conducted post-withdrawal suggest that this is broadly how former RFK voters have split. Nonetheless, this is still good news for Trump, and has probably closed the polling gap with Harris by something like 0.5%. Which, as we explained earlier, makes a big difference when it comes to odds this November. But perhaps the big reason for this muted decline is that while Harris's national polling still looks pretty great, some of her state-level polling in swing states hasn't been quite so good recently. Perhaps most significantly, Harris isn't polling brilliantly in Pennsylvania, the state which will probably end up deciding this entire election. For those of you who don't know, Pennsylvania is both one of the tightest and most popular swing states, with 19 electoral college votes, and whoever wins it will almost certainly win the presidency. In fact, according to Silver's forecast, whoever wins Pennsylvania has at least a 90% chance of winning the entire presidency, which is why both candidates are spending a plurality of their ad money there. Anyway, while Harris was beating Trump in Pennsylvania about a month ago, a series of recent polls done towards the end of August suggests that Trump has regained a tiny lead. Now, we should say that many of these pollsters generally lean Republican, which is why most aggregators, including the Financial Times, still have Pennsylvania going for Harris. Nonetheless, it does look like the polls are narrowing here, and this is at least something for Harris to look out for going forward. And if you want to dive deeper into American politics with us, you'll want to check this out. Look, as British people, we often cast a wary eye at our friends across the Atlantic. But honestly, the last few months have been especially wild. We've seen Biden bail from the race after a terrible debate.
My fellow Americans.
The red-blue divide making way for lurid green, Trump accusing Kamala of changing her race, Vance getting accused of couches, endless memes about coconut trees, and endless arguments over crowd sizes.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Obama making a joke, Trump talking about Biden like an ex he misses, RFK Jr. potentially having worms in his brain, before admitting to burying a bear in Central Park. Oh, and an assassination attempt that we all kind of forgot about because of all of the other chaos. I mean, honestly, WTF USA. The thing is though, while it might be tempting to just roll your eyes at these shenanigans, these aren't just meme-worthy moments. And you know I'm serious, because I've not stood up in a video since COVID. But these incidents actually pose important questions, like how much does the Gen Z vote matter this time round? How important will online campaigning and social media prove to be? How does the issue of race play into the 2024 election? What impact do running mates have? How much do campaign events really matter? Who's going to win the debates? And, okay, I don't have words for that one. These are the kinds of things we'll be explaining in our new Nebula original series, What to Follow USA, only on Nebula. Each week, we'll take the moments that have been dominating internet discourse and explaining the true politics under the hood. Look at me pandering to the American audience. Critically though, we'll cut through the chaos of social media and tell you what you ought to be following. For instance, whether the debates are worth your time, or if you ought to be paying more attention to which candidates are burying wild animals in the middle of busy metropolitan areas. Actually, I'll tell you this one for free. I wouldn't worry too much about the latter. We'll be releasing new episodes of What to Follow every Friday through to the election, only on Nebula. Actually, the fact that it's on Nebula means we've been able to take more risks with this series. The tone and attitude of the show isn't what you'd expect from TLDR. I'm not sure we've talked about fucking couches on YouTube before, but the journalism and reporting is exactly the standard you'd expect from us. Nebula support also means that we can do things differently, create additional content for you, and tackle topics that the YouTube algorithm just wouldn't normally allow for. It's not just this new series on Nebula either though. There's also incredible originals on the platform like Modern Conflicts from Real Life Law, which runs through everything you need to know about ongoing conflicts each month, keeping you up to date. Or the upcoming documentary from Tom Nicholas, Boomers, which takes a provocative look at the lives and legacy of the baby boom generation. Plus, we also post all of our normal content on Nebula ad-free, and often before it ends up on YouTube. So if you want to check all of that out, plus WTF USA, then head to go.nebula.tv/WTF. Or click the link in the description. That way, you can pick up an annual Nebula subscription for a huge 40% off. And you can support the show. We're really happy with how this new series has turned out, and proud to be making original content on Nebula. So please do give the series a look. We'd really appreciate it.